Okay, so the three most important ones are hue, value, and chroma. Right, three things that make up the soil color. So the most important properties or the most important parts of the soil that are creating color: organic matter, so makes it darker. And the higher the organic matter, the darker the soil. If I were to color this one, let's see. So this we're looking at 10YR43. Okay, it's 10YR43. It's almost that color, at least as far as my eyes are concerned. And then so an E horizon. So that was the A horizon. So the E horizon would be a lighter color. So we could get like a 5-3, one chip lighter, but it's lighter. That would be a hint. That's an E horizon. If it went from a silt loam to a loam, it's a coarser texture. Another hint, that would be an E horizon. So those are the two big keys for E horizons. All right. Okay. Organic matter darkens the soil, usually found at the surface, and the red colors are created by oxygen, or the gray colors are created by iron, oxidized iron or reduced iron. So oxidized iron you're going to find in well-drained areas, or at least no water table at that particular depth that you're in the soil. Gray you'll find water saturated for at least some point during the year, and it's usually during the growing season that you will find the gray colors. They can be at any depth, whether they're in the profile within 200 centimeters or at the surface. It can be at any depth. Let's see. All right. So, textual triangle, the USDA textual triangle. Have y'all seen this? If you haven't, that's fine. We'll work through it. So, it's a triangle because texture is made up of sand, silt, and clay, and the percent can never go over 100%, because otherwise it would be more than soil than you got. If it's less than 100%, you added wrong, because those are the only three things that make up soil texture. So typically the clays the 100% clay is at the top, 100% silt is at the lower right, 100% sand is at the lower left. So if I gave you a soil that had 30% sand, 40% silt, and 30% clay, you'd come down the silt side till we get to 40%. Then you'd follow that line till you come over to you'd make a line all the way down. And then you'd come over to the 30% sand and draw a line there. Now where those two intersect will happen to be the exact same line that the clay is going to end up being. If you started off with the clay and the silt, where they intersect, that's where the sand would be, and whatever combination you get. So a 30% sand, 40% silt, 30% clay is a clay loam. It's right there. So if you did a 65% sand, you'd come over here to the 65% line. If I gave you 25% clay, you'd come down to 25% clay, or silt, I mean. You draw a line there, draw a line there. You'll see a 65, 25, 10 is a sandy loam. Okay? So that's I'll be happy to show you when we can sit down more if you need more instructions on that. All right, going back to location, because we're pretty much done with the properties that we're going to talk about, other than maybe pH. In the eastern panhandle, pHs can go up as high as, depending on which method you use, 8.2 or 7.8. Usually right on top of the limestone is your highest 7.8 or 8.2 pHs. A typical pH, no matter where you are in West Virginia, very common pH, unless it's lime for agriculture, is 5.5. Trees love pH 5.5. You go up on top of Dolly sides, your pH could be 3. That's an entirely different world up there. But typically in West Virginia, 5.5 at the surface is not a bad first guess. You still want to do the test, but it's not a bad first guess. And with depth, because the trees recycle nutrients and they keep it up where the roots are. Well, the roots are at the top. So the pH is typically a little bit higher, maybe, Because that's where your bases are. Your bases are your nutrients. So the pH might be a little bit higher, 5.5 at the surface, maybe 5.8, somewhere in there. Then it'll drop to 4.5 down lower. Those are probably standard, someplace between there. You're lucky guess, but it's an educated guess. Okay, so going back to location. If you know where you are, one of the test questions is probably going to be, what is the land capability class of the major component? So a map unit is either a consociation, a complex, or some other stuff that we won't get into. If it's a consociation, it's got one major soil in it. If it's a complex, it's got two or more major soils in it, and they'll be named in the soil. You have a Gilpin silt loam 3 to 8% slope. It's a consociation. Gilpin's the only major component they got. But a Gilpin Upshur complex 3 to 8% slope has got two major soils in it. So you have to know which soil you're in to know a little bit more about it. So if you're in a Gilpin silt loam 3 to 8% slope, the land capability class would be in the interpretation group on the handout I gave you toward the back. I don't know if that's actually a map unit within the map I gave you, but it'll give you it'll probably be something like a 2E, because it's a low slope, but it's sloping, so it's going to have an erosion problem in it. I didn't mention any rocks, so there's not any stones to it. There's no depth of bedrock problem. There's no wetness issues in a Gilpin. So you have land capability class goes from 1 to 8. If it's an 8, it's rock. Okay, it's useless except for wildlife purposes, maybe a nice scenic vista. But anything 1 to 7 is in general what you have. 1 to 4 can be cropped. 4 with drainage help. And typically the higher the number, the more effort it takes to farm it. Okay. The second value, so you have a 1 is prime farmland. There's nothing behind it. It's always just 1, because you don't have to do anything to it make it farmable. 2, it's on a slope, 3 to 8% slope. If that's all its problem is, it'll be a 2E. If it's got a water table, it'll be a 2W. If it's got rocks in it, it'll be a 2S kind of thing. If it's got a 2C, it'll be some kind of climatic conditions, which we don't have around here. So you have the E, the S, and the what
W.
W, yes. E, S, and W, those are the 3 you really have to worry about. Okay. So there's a lot of stuff as far as what soils do for the world. We grow all our food in it. We use it as a foundation holding material. Food. I see it. Did it say anything else on it? I want to just give you an idea of some of the test questions that have been asked in the past. So if I give you a map unit name, a GUC, that's a Gilpin Upshur on a C slope. That's probably what that is. What's the slope of that? So that's the C, the last bit, represents the slope. And a C has a value between 8 and 15% slope. So it's important to know how to use, and find it, a clinometer. Clinometers have two. You look through that end, you keep both eyes open, and there's a red line in there, and there'll be 2 stakes set, and you basically set this on top of the stake and look at the top of the other stake, and you read the number. There's 2 sides. One's in percent, one's in degrees. Percent's a bigger number. Basically, 100% slope means for every 1 foot you move horizontally, you gain 1 foot. So 100% slope means it's 45 degrees. So it's not quite 2 to 1, but it's really close to 2 to 1. So if you're looking through that and you see, I'm looking at let's see, I'm looking at 10% slope. We're looking at about a 6 degree slope, but it's always recorded in percent. On my colorimeter, and I think they're all the same, percent's on the right. It's hard for people to look through and keep both eyes open, so it's something that they got to learn to do. But it just takes a little bit of practice. So where on the slope are you? I mean, as far as a two-dimensional, are you on your back slope? Your back slope, basically here down to here. You're on your foot slope, your ankle down here. You're on the toe slope, your foot. You're on the summit. You know where you are. So be able to look at the topo map or look around and see where you are. Okay. You just pick the right choice. So when I said location, if you get your location wrong and the question is